guess we're good to go. I think I got the thumbs up. Good evening. This is the March 8th, 2023 meeting of the Finance Committee. I'm sure many of you are accustomed to seeing Rich Fenton sitting in this chair. I'm going to try to pinch hit for him this evening, and big shoes to fill, but with your help, I'll do my best to fill them. Our first order of business on our agenda that has been posted, our review of meeting minutes. And if you don't mind, I think we're going to take a pause or a pass regarding the February 15th, 2023 meeting minutes, but ask you to review and comment on and approve the minutes of March 1st, 2023, a meeting that we had a week ago. Which I believe you've all been sent those. In one of the 437 emails that I sent you, they were included. So, is there a motion?
I have a motion to discuss.
Motion to discuss.
Just one typo on the top. Members attending, Tony, you've got yourself listed twice.
I thought that was pretty important, that meeting.
So what's your point?
Can we all be listed twice?
So with that friendly amendment, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? With that friendly amendment, I think it's important to note that Tony has a knack of capturing an hour-and-a-half, 2-hour meeting in 2 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper and gets the essence of the entire meeting succinctly presented, so congratulations. So with that, you do deserve to have your name mentioned twice. So the next is we have two presenters this evening, and they're listed on our agenda as items number 4 and 5. With your indulgence, we're going to take them out of order and ask the town clerk to present first. We spoke about that, and the fact that there are no times assigned to it would allow us to do that without offending anybody who was thinking otherwise or going to tune in otherwise. And I believe I extended the courtesy to Travis that would be the case as well. So with that, Laurie, the floor is yours. And as you see on our agenda, she's going to present budgets number 1161, the town clerk, and 1162, elections.
Okay. So thank you for having me here tonight. I was asked to do a PowerPoint on the function of the job. So before we get to the budget, just for anyone who's not familiar with what a town clerk does. Before I took this job, I remember thinking that the town clerk was the person you call for everything. And it kind of is true.
You are reminded that the town administrator is in the room.
That is true, but I think I get a lot of calls that I direct to her.
Okay.
All right, so I'm sure most people are aware that town clerks are responsible for elections. Another thing, before I got hired, when they said, oh, you realize you have to work extra for elections, I remember being very naive. Other town clerks and I will laugh about the fact that we thought that meant working extra on election day, not understanding all the work that goes into elections months, sometimes years before they actually happen. So in that regard, we register voters, process any changes that they may have to party, address, name, process petitions and nomination papers, which often requires the town clerk's office to be open past normal business hours, past my normal business hours being open till 5 as opposed to 3 or 4. Organize the caucus, process vote-by-mail ballots, which we all know has become the thing right now. In 2020, there was thousands of ballots processed, and I fully anticipate with the presidential election that we'll be looking at the same in that year. We conduct early voting in person, which the state has made a 2-week process, including weekends. Educating voters. I can't tell you how many phone calls I receive asking why they're registered as you when it should be an I for independent. You, of course, being unenrolled, which is what independent is now called, but that was not really our voters were not properly educated with this change. I train new election workers, prepare the ballots for the elections, and act as the chief election officer on election day. Mass General Law requires that we send out a census every year, or the annual street list, it's titled at the top, to every home in the town of Paxton. We have to process the return, God bless you.
Bless you.
We have to process the return census forms. Then I just sent this week a second mailing to the non-responders. Anyone who doesn't respond after 6 months, they'll be inactivated to make sure that we're keeping our lists up to date. Then, with all this information that I received from the census, create the street list book. In federal census years, we also assist the state with federal census data and education of our voters. Many of you are aware that I'm responsible for dog licensing as well. We license approximately 1,000 dogs in town. I send reminders to all of our residents. We do have late fees, and I try to make it so our residents don't have to pay that, so they are sent 2 mailings before a late fee is put on them. I send reminders for expired rabies, print animal control officer fines, and I accept the payments for those. And then I follow up on any animal control issues, including dog bites and any other complaints that we may have. Oh, I keep going the wrong way. Let me see. How do I do that? For vital records, process any requests that we have for certified copies of birth, death, and marriage certificates. Those requests have gone up significantly thanks to the new Real IDs and the requirements for people to have actual certified copies of those records. I certify new birth and death records, and as is my luck, we get the home births, which are a whole different animal. We don't have very many of those, but those always happen on election day. I act as the burial agent for the Board of Health. I meet with couples when they're filing their marriage intentions. I process any amendments to vital records, including fixing any errors that may have occurred. A lot of times parents are filling out the paperwork when they've just had their baby and are totally sleep deprived and are totally unaware that the hospital administrator has put their wrong address or what have you. And I assist with historical research and genealogy as well. I believe it was back in 2020 that we took over a new website design for our town. And since that time, I've been the primary person to make changes on the website. Individual boards and committees do have access to make changes on their own pages, and some do that regularly. Others depend on me to do it for them. It just depends on the board and committee and how computer savvy they are. I do create accounts for the new users, update the board and committee pages at their request. I send out e-subscribe messages to keep residents informed of tax payment deadlines, which I did today, town meetings, which there was a change today, trash delays, etc. I also update the town Facebook page to keep residents informed that way, because not everyone's going to the website, and I realize that. I refer to myself as the town help desk. When you walk into the town hall, I'm the first face that most people see. A lot of residents come in and they're kind of lost. They don't know which department they need. They don't know where to go, and I'm the one who kind of helps them get there. Same thing with any phone calls. A lot of people do call my office, even though it has nothing to do with me. They just don't know who to call, so I'm the one who helps get them there. For board and committees, I swear in all newly elected and appointed officials. I provide open meeting law and conflict of interest law materials to all members and track their compliance. Educate on the campaign finance law requirements and ensure that they are in compliance. This is the year actually campaign finance law changed, so I'm going to have to reach out to all of my elected officials. Create online resources for board and committee members. This year on my objectives, Heather had asked that I create some kind of a booklet for new board and committee members. This is a work in progress. It's not yet complete, but I would say it's maybe 75% finished. And I've opted, as opposed to making it a paper booklet, it's all online. So if you want to view that at some point, every piece that I have finished is on there, and anything that's not finished, it says something to the effect that it's still being worked on. I post all the meeting agendas for boards and committee members. I'm a member of the Board of Registrars, and I'm a clerk on that board. And I'm a resource to all the board and committee members. A lot of times it's questions about open meeting law, conflict of interest law, and I'm usually the first person that they call. For education, I spend a lot of time trying to get myself as educated as possible. Laws are changing daily, and particularly since the pandemic, election laws, they just, every time I turn around, there's a new law and things have changed. Even, I'm trying to remember as far as the having remote meetings, I believe that deadline that we can have remote meetings, it's sometime in March. I'd have to look, because I know it's posted on the website, but I'm waiting to find, I imagine they're going to wait till the 9th hour to tell us it's going to be extended again. I can't imagine it won't be. But I do attend 3 conferences each year. And I attend numerous mentoring sessions. I actually have one tomorrow, and different Zoom classes to keep myself up to date on things. Today I tried to attend an ADA compliance class. I got a lot of interruptions, but fortunately it was being recorded, so I can go back to view that later. In 2022, I became a certified Massachusetts municipal clerk, which required, taking all these classes and then taking a test. And I'm currently serving on the Mass Town Clerks Association Education Committee and have been asked at this year's conference to help lead one of the classes. For town meetings, I produce all the minutes for the annual and special town meetings. I coordinate the check-in at the town meetings and record attendees in the state computer. I file any bylaw changes with the Attorney General's office. Notify the Secretary of the Commonwealth of acceptances of Mass General laws, and I report borrowing to the Department of Revenue. And also, when town meeting dates get changed, as they just did, I make sure that there's a calendar, all the dates get changed. So because the town meeting date changed, the last day to register to vote changed, and the last day to post the warrant changed. That update has already been completed and is posted on the website for anyone who needs that information. What else do I do? I'm one of the chief records access officers for all public records requests. Particularly during election years, the public records requests are intensive. There are people who are running for office who ask for updates on who is voted by mail almost daily. I provide notary services, issue raffle licenses, responsible for the preservation of records. I do take that very seriously, as we have records that go back, hundreds of years. And I, since I've been there, have replaced all of the books for the vital records because they were falling apart and the records were being destroyed. So they now have all nice sleeves and put away nicely. I issue business certificates and more work on the budget, I guess I should have put on here. But anyway, so that's what I do in a nutshell.
Good.
Absolutely.
Are you going to digitize any of the records?
All right, so as far as digitizing the records, at this point, I don't believe so. Well, let me back that up. There are some things I would like to get up on the internet, but I am hesitant to get rid of any paper records at this point in time. I actually went to a Mass Town Clerks Association class on it, and there is a lot of issues with digitizing records. So let's say, for example, I had digitized a number of years ago and put everything down on a floppy disk. Well, floppy disks, you can't even read them anymore. So they said there's a lot to think about when you're changing the records. If you're going to put it into that, you have to think about the cost of transferring everything and then the cost down the road of every time that technology updates and changing all your records so that they're still readable. So at this point, I mean, in my head, I would love to get all town meeting minutes up on the website, but I wouldn't get rid of the paper ones, just in case. Any other questions?
Laurie, before you begin your presentation, Heather, it was mentioned twice by Laurie, the annual meeting change. Some of us know, many of us don't. Could we just take a minute to connect that dot as to what Laurie was alluding to?
Sure. So the select board, we did a Zoom meeting today to push out at my request the annual town meeting from the original date of May 1st, I think it was, to June 5th. We have a lot of working parts this year, one of them being the school budget. There's new administration over at the Wachusett Regional School District, and they are trying to get their E&D certified, which is their version of free cash, as well as other numbers in line. And right now, our assessment from them is about 4.18%. There's a decent probability that they'll have their E&D certified by mid-April. If they do, then it will offset potentially some of our assessment, which would reduce the amount that we'd have to do cuts by, which means at the end of the day, we put people in a more whole position. There's other moving factors as well. We're trying to get a solid number down on our regional dispatch assessment. It's the first year we're going to have one. We're still working through that. There's pieces that we're still trying to put together. With Rich being out as well, it gives us a little bit more time to take a couple extra weeks to make sure we get all the numbers together and all the information, have the latest and greatest.
June what is the date?
It's June 5th.
5th.
Yeah, we didn't want to push it too late because finance, our treasurer and accountant will start having meltdowns as you get closer to June and having the books ready for July.
Well, obviously, yeah, I mean, we were behind starting, and we're still catching up with budgets. We don't have them all. You also at one time talked about the fact that you were in negotiation for trash collection for a new contract there.
Yep, so Board of Health met yesterday. We're gonna be finalizing what we need to do with that next week, but that will take a couple weeks. So it's another good point, Steve. We'll have those solid numbers this way.
Yep, okay, great.
We're trying to avoid having to amend anything on the floor that is just gonna cause more confusion. It's better to have the right numbers to start than wrong numbers and then have to amend.
I would think all of us are very much relieved to hear that the date has moved back, because frankly, we would be scrambling to meet the May 1 date.
So right now, the warrant close date is still on the end of March, but the select board have it on their agenda for Monday. It should have no problem passing to push it out till, I think, April 24th is what we're shooting for.
Okay, that's also good to know. Thank you.
So,
Laurie, you want to come back
If it's okay.
or stay there? Or
Yeah, if it's
what would-
okay, I'd like to stay here, because I didn't prepare like a formal presentation for the budget. I thought that everyone had the spreadsheet, and I was under the impression I was just here to answer questions.
Is it possible for someone to put her budget up on the screen? Would that be possible?
Lori, can you come log into your,
Yeah,
do
actually-
you have it on, well, you have it at least on email, right? Nowhere else? Do you have it on OneDrive?
Can we log into me up there?
Mm-hmm. For web, do you wanna, sorry, you logging into the server or OneDrive? Where's your file at? It's on the server, isn't it?
Probably.
Okay.
Or, I don't know. How do I know? I don't know where it is.
So this duck walks in the bar.
All right, Lori, you're gonna have to come sign in.
will be updated.
Oh.
So with that being said, Mark, do you want to have a quick conversation about the budget calendar real quick while Lori's rolling that up?
Yeah,
Would that be a
that'd be a
relevant
great
combo?
idea, yep.
So I started taking a look at the dates we have coming up. And I actually drafted something, and about 3/4 of the way through drafting, one thing dawned on me. So as far as capital goes, Capital Improvement Committee, we have a meeting tomorrow night. We're still working through, we should, fingers crossed, have the school's actual requests in writing. And hopefully some additional information for them. And then the committee needs to figure out what we're doing, what the recommendations are, any additional questions, and so forth. But one of the things we talked about at the beginning of the year is we don't have a lot of funds available to us. So if there was a possibility that we were gonna end up asking for a capital exclusion like we did last year, if that's even an option, then our timeline shoots up a little bit further, even though the timeline for the warrant extends. Reason being, we have to put something on the election warrant. We have to get it in with the rest of the pieces for the election warrant. So Lori and I were chatting before the meeting started, so it looks like everything has to be in and finalized to her to be on the election warrant by April 3rd. So that's gonna impact mostly capital, right? Between capital and also the select board to review any capital requests and funding options. So I just wanted to put that on your radar. With that being said, I do have a copy of just a penciled out piece, and all I simply did is I moved some big meetings, but pretty much I just had a rolling calendar for budget hearings for FinCom and capital meetings on Thursdays. And I just extended those out. But a couple of things I do have on here, and this one's pretty solidified. I believe Donna's been in touch, Mark, but if she hasn't, March 27th, if everyone can put that on your calendar. So that is scheduled for currently a joint meeting with the Select Board and FinCom. We had capital as part of that, but I don't think we need capital there that night because it's already a lot on that evening. So we have the presentation coming in from the Wachusett Regional School District. We also have trying to make sure Bay Path's available and they can do their budget presentation the same night. And then we have a quick, probably about 30-minute presentation from the auditor on our finances for FY22. So we figured everyone was there at the table. We should just try to get all those together.
So that's, excuse me, Heather, that one evening you have the Wachusett Regional School District,
Yeah,
Bay Path,
yeah,
and the auditor?
yes. So the hope is
I
that.
don't need to remind anybody, that's a lot.
I'm aware. But I also know time is short as well as, I want to be as respectful of people's times as I can instead of having them come to multiple meetings multiple times a night.
It came up with some
We are trying to shoot for that meeting to be at 6 o'clock. So we're waiting, I don't know if Donna's reached out yet. She was trying to make sure the presenter parties were available first before she reached out to everyone else to see. But that would start us a little bit earlier. We only anticipate that the auditors will go about 30 minutes, that the Bay Path, I think she said traditionally goes about 30 minutes, and then the school goes for around an hour-ish or a little bit, give or take. So,
So why don't we ask that you continue to mold and craft and draft that and send it to me in draft form, and I'll send it to the committee members.
okay. But if everyone can make sure that date is on your radar, that would be very,
It was on the original
It was,
calendar
yes.
that you sent us, so
absolutely.
I believe it's on our radar.
Okay.
Right.
And with that, what it pushes back is the joint meeting for recommendations for the annual town meeting warrant articles. So the night that I'm shooting for the budget to close, or the warrant to close would be April 24th. So that would line up with that joint meeting. So that's almost a month later than what we had. But I'll send it to you, Mark. I just want to
Yep.
make sure it's on people's radars.
Don't want to get too much in the weeds, but my experience is voting them, approving them, And I've always marveled that the CIPC committee had 2 weeks, but the printer had 4. How is this gonna be printed in time for the warrant article to be available at the meeting, which is now June 5th? Is that, so there
Yeah.
is gonna be that time?
Yeah, I
I
mean,
may
it'll
have
be,
answered my own question.
yeah, yeah.
That means that it doesn't have to go to the printer until May?
That means we have about a month to get it through the printer and
Right.
out, which was slightly less than what we currently had,
All right.
so. Was she able to, were you able to log in as yourself, Lori?
I'm logged in, but I can't get into,
You can't connect to the server?
no, it doesn't do anything. I can click it and nothing happens at all.
So is there a way that we can follow along in the workbook?
Yeah, we should-
I've got it on Excel.
Yeah, I've got it in front of me.
The other option is, Lori, just email it to yourself?
I'm trying to get into the email.
Okay.
You want to put it on WPAX TV at townpaxton.net, so you can pick it up from here,
Put what on?
the Excel.
Okay.
May not have this, you have the most updated version?
I sent it to Mark,
Mark's forwarding information, but he didn't bring his computer.
but I can send it right now from that computer, because I can bring it up on that. We can do that.
Gina's email to yourself.
I guess, Lori, we don't want to make necessary work for you. If you can explain to us, you know, what constitutes the huge increase in count 5102 or 5103?
Yeah.
I mean, significantly from, you know,
We're on budget 1161.
1161,
Okay.
yes. All right. I mean, 5200 has an increase.
Okay, so you're asking.
But I'm, you know, if you can just kind of explain to us the context of what the number represents, that would be helpful.
Okay, let me just pull this up on my end here.
Steve, what were the numbers, what were the line items?
Accounts number 5102, 5103, 5200.
Okay,
They're the ones that have increased significantly.
If you've got the workbook
from
open,
last year.
go to the clerk narrative.
nothing
Okay.
over.
Yeah, basically what we're asking you to do is just kind
Yeah,
of read
yeah.
from your clerk narrative.
okay, absolutely. All right, so as far as 5102, while it looks like the number increased, it actually didn't. All we did was move things around. Heather had asked that it be easier for the taxpayer to be able to look and know exactly how much. So that a resident would be able to easily look and see how much money am I actually making. Whereas before, my stipends were separated all over the place. So for example, there is $250 that I get as being the clerk of the Board of Registrars. That has been moved over to this line item. So in last year's budget, that amount was just listed under the Board of Registrar budget as opposed to under Town Clerk. Also census taker, which was 500, was moved from that line item over to this one. I have last year, at the annual town meeting, they approved acceptance of Mass General Law 41, Section 19K, which provides the town clerk with an additional $1,000 per year if they have their CMMC certification, which I do. It's important to note that it's not in last year's budget, even though it was approved at town meeting. That was not in the budget, so we will, at the end of the year, need to do a transfer from another account to cover that funding. But, so that's why the 5102 looks like it has increased, but, I mean, it has increased by the 1,000, but again, that's approved Mass General Law at this point.
Okay.
And then I think there's a census taker stipend as well.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and the census taker stipend, which was in 5104, which I note now.
Yeah,
is
that was-
0. So,
Yeah.
okay, that explains that, all right.
Plus 90 for records management, and that gives you the total of 1840.
Yeah.
Okay, and Under 5103, which used to be the clerk register stipend,
So 5103 is the assistant town clerk. Last year, we had moved that funding over to a different line item, which was a municipal assistant. We had one individual who was, for the past several employees actually that worked for me, we had, it was Tiffany and then Dina, that worked half in my office and half in the treasurer collector's office. And so we removed that money from both my budget and the treasurer collector's budget and there was a new budget for municipal assistant. We have since recently moved back to having two separate people.
okay?
And and now the two separate people, instead of being municipal assistants, they're actually titled and have more responsibility and more functions that they're able to do. So, again, it's not really an increase, it's just moving the money.
Okay, thank you. That explains.
Okay.
I'm good. Answers my questions, Mark.
So how about a Reader's Digest version of it? If we all look at the FY 2023 approved budget of 53,067. Does everybody see that? If we bring the Board of Registrars from its own 2023 budget to here, to the tune of 3850, then the total for that FY 2023 for both of them is 56,009. This year it's 68,007 for a total increase of 12,000, which essentially is the assistant clerk at the top of the page, which was in its own budget and now has been split up into two separate budgets. There's $100 and $35 and $25 here or there, but the $12,000 increase, to my mind, came down to that particular position. Which the question is, we have former and current representatives of the Board of Registrars. Do we like the idea of discontinuing the cost center for the Board of Registrars? Because that's essentially what has happened.
Well, I think it gets merged in, Mark, to the elections line.
Yes.
So the idea was that there was Board of Registrars department and elections department. All of the money was for the same purpose, right? For the election registrar function. And it was very hard to figure out, when to charge from line A and when to charge from Department B. So it puts it all together, so it's a summary. The only piece that came into this from the registrar, I believe, was the stipend for, the clerk stipend. Everything else from the registrar department merged in with the election department. Those two got married.
Right. So my question is, do we like that? Does that make sense?
I like the change personally. It makes my life a lot easier because, as Heather mentioned, there's a lot of overlap between the two.
Okay.
I'm going to just throw my 2 cents in, having been a registrar and worked with Laurie for a lot of years before I got on FinCom. She is busier than that PowerPoint says. It's anything that makes what she has to do easier and cleaner, I'm all for it. There's a lot going on in that office.
Yep.
I mean, I've lived pretty much all of that with you over the years, and it's a lot. It's busy. So if this makes her job easier, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and I don't want my question of merging 3 into 2 to question what you're doing. I just wanted to make sure it made good budget sense. And it appears it does to everybody, so that's fine. Do you want to go to a cost center 1162, which is the elections / registrars?
Are there any particular questions on that budget?
I did have one question on 5103 about the drop in early voting processing. That's a pretty substantial, just asking why. If early voting is going to be, just grow, I just wanted to know why it's going from 2160 to 1450.
Bear with me a second.
Sure.
Sure, I had a good reason.
I've got a spreadsheet dated 3/2, so is that not, what do you have under it?
It's 3.7 or 3.8.
Okay. And what do you have for early voting under 51?
I do show that big drop, and I'm trying to.
Yeah, I show the same thing, 2160 to 1450.
Oh, that's a good.
That's a good point, Carol. Less elections, maybe?
Do you have this sheet, Jeremy? She sent this over as part of like
I-
the backup. So on the elections thing, we actually did, and mine might be slightly off for Lori, so she updated it. But it has, I'll show you. So this is the breakdown of everything. Like we did pennies and hours.
Okay.
But yes, I think it's because it's less elections this year, but also it's not as big of ones, the ones we have. But we penny, you know, like everything else, right? We count it to the penny
Right.
based on what she needs.
Okay.
I have no question for well over 62. I'm good.
Good. I'm good. Maybe a little tiny bit of the confusion might be a later item on our agenda. But I'm good in terms of what I'm looking
Yeah, that's
at.
fine. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Travis, if you'd care to join us, we're ready to go. We're going to be looking at 3 budget cost centers of Travis, 1421, still identified as highway, 1423 identified as snow and ice, and 1491 as cemetery.
Well, I thank you very much for having me here before you folks this evening. You would like to start with the highway budget, sir?
Yes.
Okay, so there was several changes to the highway budget. At the request of the town administrator, we included the compensation from cemetery and moved it over into the highway budget as to streamline compensation to make it more clear for everybody, a little easier for my assistant to also do payroll as well. So in total, we transferred $17,685 from the cemetery compensation to the highway compensation. So there is an increase in the compensation line item because of that. Particularly under my salary, 5102. Previously, there was a little over $3,000 that was being paid out of the cemetery budget. That has now been transferred over to highway, just to have it all a little clearer. In total, we did increase the highway budget in the amount of $74,683. Again, we made several changes. The compensation was changed. We're also looking to add 2 part-time summer employees, which was agreed upon last year during the budget season. We increased the compensation for cemetery in order to do that. We had an extremely difficult time the last couple of years keeping up with maintenance, not only of the cemeteries, but the recreation fields and facilities, as well as the public town buildings and common area for mowing and string trimming. So that has been added there as well. Moved a couple of items around. Stormwater was separated into its own line item, into its own subcategory. You'll see where it was previously listed, we left it there with a 0 balance, moved it into its own subcategory, 5401. I apologize. Back to compensation, we also did the same thing with the administrative assistance position. The town administrator requested that we separate out the non-union employee from the union employees, just to make that a little clearer as well.
Travis, you went to stormwater and then you left it.
Yep, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yep.
Can I come back to stormwater?
You most certainly can.
So it's a hot item. It's been kicked around for 3 or 4 or 5 years. I think separating here is a good step with its own section in your budget. But
I
a year
agree.
ago, you made mention that this could actually evolve into maybe needing to be its own department. Is that the general sense still, or is it separating it this way, accomplishing what you want to accomplish?
That is still my professional opinion. I spoke with Heather about this. In my initial budgets that I proposed to Heather, I had included the 2 additional employees, as was suggested by finance to me last year when I came before you.
Yeah.
I was informed that there's no money this year to do that, so that and to take that out of the budget. So I did originally have that in there. We removed it in order to try to alleviate some of the burden to the ratepayers.
So only because it's in your budget, there are some of us in the room that think that the road's a big issue. Forget the schools, but the roads are a big issue, the trees are a big issue, and stormwater is a big issue.
Yep.
And Opera basically allocated quite a bit of money
Certainly.
for stormwater. Actually, in 2 sections, one of them was 32,600, and one of them was 105,000. And now you've budgeted from 24 to 28. So the point being made, there's a lot of money going towards stormwater. Can you differentiate between what you need to have in your annual budget versus what got allocated from the ARPA funds?
And Travis, before you answer, can I ask a second part to that question?
Certainly.
Which is, stormwater from last year to this year, if you include the purchase services and the drainage pipe catch basins, it's up over 50%. Could you speak to why that increase exists from one year to the other?
So
to this
I
year?
can tell you the costs have increased to us dramatically, not just of the cost for pipe, the cost of pretty much everything. And anything that has to do with diesel fuel, trucking, and anything of that nature, cement, manholes, catch basins. We have a large portion of our storm system throughout the town that is, when it was originally installed, was corrugated steel. As you can imagine, what salt does to steel. So what we're finding now is we're having drainage mains rotting out and failing on us all throughout the entire distribution system of the storm systems. The way the storm systems are set up, there's many small storm systems throughout town. Our main focus right now is on the MS4 portion of the storm system, which does not encompass the entire town. It's about 2/3 of the town that gets encompassed. But we can't neglect the other sections of the town as well when it comes to stormwater. So the failing infrastructure is the major increase, and I'll be completely honest with you, the funding we have in here, I don't think is nearly enough.
Well, that was the next question. So has all the, because I'm looking at an ARPA report that I downloaded today, but it's as of September of 2022. Has all that money been spent that's been allocated in earmarked from ARPA
No,
for
it
the
ha-
stormwater?
No, it has not as of yet. So we have a consultant that is working with us to help us get into compliance. There was several years, the first several years of the MS4 permit, that there was some neglect there. I don't think on any one particular person's part. It was just a lack of funding. There's a lot that goes into all of the MS4 permitting, a lot of regulations that we have to meet. One way or another, we're going to have to meet them. A
So
lot of
was the
reporting,
ARPA
a lot of sampling, testing. When we're out testing, If we find contaminants in the water, we then have to investigate that further, figure out where the contaminants are coming from, whether it's soap suds, sewerage, anything, oil, anything of that nature. And then we have to rectify the issue. So it's not as cut and dry as just the stormwater running down the edge of the road and it goes into a pipe and dumps into a stream. There's a lot that goes behind all of this.
I guess, and I'll end here, part of my question is, we're concerned about this year's budget,
Certainly.
but if you've allocated nearly $140,000 for a catch-up type of
Yep.
stormwater, and now we're budgeting 28,000, and I think you said 5 minutes ago, in your professional and personal opinion, that's not enough. Is next year's stormwater budget flowing through your budget gonna be 50,000?
Oh, to be honest with you, it should probably be a lot more than that. Just to clarify a little bit on what you're speaking of on the ARPA funds, there was 32,000, and I want to say it was some change, 32.8 or something of that nature.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
that was set aside for the design of the storm system on West Street. So that ARPA money came before the ARPA committee, and it was approved to do the design for the water main system on West Street and West Street and Holbrook, I believe. In that same thought process, we were able to not spend quite as much money on the design portion of the storm system to include the storm system. So all that money basically went to now the water distribution design system and the storm system design system for all of West Street from the center of town down to Moore State Park, including Holbrook Lane, and in hopes that we can apply for a mass work grant this year and try to get some funding in order to upgrade the water main and the storm system over there. The other portion of that was to bring us the 100,000 that you were referring to, sir, is to bring us basically into compliance, because we're not in compliance at this time and where we should be in the stormwater regulations for the MS4 permit.
So in your narrative, you said you're not in compliance, but you also say at some point it's gonna be a penalty to the tune of $25,000 a day.
Correct.
At what point are we gonna be compliant and out of harm's way of being assessed that $25,000 a day?
So we're hoping to get to that point this year with the money that was allotted through the ARPA committee. That the Fuss and O'Neill is working, they're our consulting company, and they're working with us to create these reports and everything that was backlogged prior to me taking over. They're assisting us with sampling, screenings, investigating outfalls, investigating catch basins. We're doing as much as we can in-house. It's just a lot of work, and we don't have the staff to do it.
Travis, so in order to make sure I understand what you just told us, what you just said was your hope or your belief is that all of that will be in place by June 30th
That's the hope.
of this year,
Yep.
bringing us into compliance,
Yep.
thereby eliminating the $25,000 penalty a day, which would be assessed when?
And that's what the EPA and the DEP has the ability to fine any MS4 permit holder up to $25,000 a day should they not be in compliant, should they determine that they need to do that. To the best of my knowledge, that has not started happening yet in the state of Massachusetts. I don't believe they've started fining towns that type of funds. We're in fairly good shape. Fuss and O'Neill has done a lot of work for us over the past year, and we're hoping that we'll be, maybe not June 30th, but hopefully by mid-fall, we're caught up to where we need to be. So then it would be all the annual requirements from this point forward. So in year 5, we need to start on some design factors for certain storm systems that need to get put in place. And I don't recall exactly what year it is, but coming up, we have to start implementing these things. So we're looking at some design fees coming up ahead of us on top of the sampling, testing, cleaning, biannual cleaning of catch basins, biannual street sweeping. They want us sweeping the roads twice a year. They want us cleaning the catch basins twice a year. These are all part of these new regulations. And in doing that, we're doing inspections, and I can almost guarantee that as we're out doing these inspections, we're going to find more storm system mains that have failed or are in the process of failing.
All right, as a follow-up question then, based on the budget that you've submitted that we are reviewing tonight,
Yep.
does this budget then reflect your planned activities starting July 1 until June of 2024?
We're going to do the best we can with what we were informed to put in for that stormwater line item. So we're going to do everything we can that we have the ability to do for all of the sampling and testing. We will do everything that we can in order to make all repairs and replacements of infrastructure as needed. That funding is not a lot of funds to do that with.
So just to add on, just the question, so an ARPA report dated after yours, 3/6, says that we've expended about half of that 105,000.
Yep.
So you've still got some of that assets planned to go. That money's got somewhere to go for what you have planned.
Yeah, so it's part of the
Okay.
contract that we made with Fuss and O'Neill when it
Right.
was made.
Okay, so there's still, it's about half
Yep.
expended.
Yeah. I thought I had seen an earlier one, that's why I was struck
Yeah,
by
I've
the
got one
one
that's
I-
dated 3/6, it said there's
Yeah.
about 52.5, which is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I must have a different website that I went to than you, so. With the committee's indulgence, and we have the benefit of some of us having attended a capital improvements planning committee, there's a ditch head attachment. You made a point that you're in a compelling point in your narrative too, that for the third year in a row, you're understaffed by 2 people, but you haven't quantified it and put it in your budget.
Correct.
And some of that understaffing is being pulled toward this stormwater project.
Yep.
Will the ditch head attachment help out in any way in that regard?
Certainly. So for you folks that aren't aware, we were requested to the capital committee a ditcher head. So basically, it's an attachment that would go on our side boom mower. And I don't know if you've ever driven along Marshall Street. You'll see swales on the side of Marshall Street that are pretty deep, dug out. So we're currently going out right now with a 2-man crew with a backhoe, a dump truck, and digging those out as best we can in order to clean them. It's a tedious task. Last year, we were informed that we're going to need to start using a detail regularly because on major roads like Marshall Street, there's a lot of traffic and it's dangerous. We take up half the road. So this ditcher head attachment is basically a wheel that mounts on the end of an arm that has steel scoops, for a lack of a better term, because I don't have a picture of it here to show you. So it spins at a certain RPM on this head, and so we can now just drive down the road. So something that would have taken us a day previously with a 2-man crew and potentially a detail officer, especially on roads like Marshall Street, we'll be able to do in an hour or 2 with this piece of equipment.
So let me footnote this. The cost of that is only $14,000.
Sure.
That seems to be a pretty wise investment.
I thought so as well, hence why I put it before the capital.
Don't want to get ahead of the capital improvement planning committee, but that's pretty good money well spent, I think.
Nope.
So,
And we're trying to do everything we can to keep up with the workload we have and minimize the time that jobs take us. Again, we're a small department. I understand we're also a small town. But that doesn't take away the fact that there's only 7 employees that are out maintaining the roads throughout the winter months. Not, take stormwater out of it. Getting those 2 additional employees would be huge, not just for stormwater, but also for us in winter events. It's these last couple of storms we had, we were, you know, most guys were either on an hour or two sleep or no sleep at all, and we worked 18 to 24 hours straight on no sleep previously. So it becomes extremely hard on the staff. So adding 2 employees to our department, not only in the good weather to maintain the storm system and make all these necessary repairs, but it would also alleviate a lot of stress on our staff. And we would then, during big storms, be able to split our crews a little bit so that we're only running the guys 12 hours at a time or 14 hours at a time and not 20, 22 hours on no sleep.
So, again, your indulgence, another macro takeaway that I have, and I'm gonna cite some other areas in town, keeping in mind we're one town, so this is a friendly observation, but the takeaway that I get here, and I got at the Capital Improvement Planning Committee, is your men are doing a lot of work for recreation.
Yep.
And a lot of work for the cemetery.
Yep.
And they got a lot of money, and you don't have any. It just seems that the boxes need to be moved around a little bit to make this work for everybody, not, on top of which you're looking for a fairly substantial and expensive mower in capital improvement planning, and that's not to mow the common. That's to mow those other areas that I just spoke of. It just seems to me that we gotta think a little bit outside of the highway budget
Yep.
in order to make it work. So,
And we are, sir, and I've reached out to those committees. Those 2 committees have been great to work with,
and they are terrific.
they're
You're right.
working with us the best that they can.
Yeah. I don't mean to suggest they're not. I'm
Yeah.
just wondering if
Yep.
there's more chicken on that bone.
Yeah, I understand.
Is all I'm making mention of. So,
Travis,
thank you.
Yes, sir.
question regarding your staff and your salaries.
Yep.
I'm assuming they are in line with the structure, the new salary structure in the bands that we have in the town?
I'm not,
I can
They're
address that.
union.
So Steve, so almost all of his 7 guys are union members.
Okay, I
So
did not know that.
They're
All
per
right.
union. The only one who aligns, because Travis is under contract, is Tiffany. But yes, she's under the wage and comp chart.
Okay, thank you.
any further questions on the highway budget?
But he-
50% increase on town garage, can you speak to that?
Yeah, the garage is in
Lousy
extremely tough shape. You know, we're doing the best we can to keep working with what we have. The garage is extremely undersized for the equipment we have. We have for no better way to put it, but a failed cesspool system. We're currently pumping out the cesspool once, twice, sometimes 3 times a month, depending on what we're getting for weather. On top of that, we have several doors on the building that are rotting, need to be replaced, not just man doors, but also large doors. I mean, the list goes on. There's a lot of
Understood,
repairs that
and-
need to be made there. There is a committee put together that has been working towards trying to replace the DPW facility. It's a lot of money, unfortunately.
Right. My question is really around, is the 67,500 going to address all those needs around repairs, et cetera?
No, I don't think it's going to. It's going to Band-Aid up the extremely bad areas. That's what that money's going to do.
The only way to address that is to change the $67,500 to read $14,250,000.
Which is a brand new.
Yeah.
Well, may not have to be 14 million, but it's
It's
gonna have
not,
7 figures.
yeah, it's not cheap to replace a facility like that.
Correct.
You know, and I think the biggest struggle we're seeing right now with that, it's within the watershed zone. So Asnabunskett Reservoir is still considered a drinking water reservoir. So where all the buildings sit currently at our 107 Holden Road facility are all within the primary drinking water zone. So in the design phase, everything needs to be pushed out. We need to get away from the reservoir the best we can. you can't wash vehicles near a reservoir, so we need to build a wash bay where we can recycle the water, and that's not getting put into the drinking water. You know, fuel stations need to be changed out. Currently, there's an old diesel fuel tank. There's no gas in town. So right now, every vehicle that's any town department owns that is run on gasoline has to go elsewhere, out of town, to get gas. Again, the list goes on and on. There's a lot of things that need to change in order to make that work, and Heather and I have been working together to try to get the information that we need to make certain that we can still build on that location through the DCR, because it is all regulated because it's a drinking water zone. So we're working on it.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions on Department Budget 1421? How about Travis, 1423, snow and ice?
Okay. So snow and ice is, basically we increased the snow and ice budget by $1,000. Snow and ice is the only budget that can be deficit spent in. Not that we want to attempt to do that if we don't have to, but it can be. Hence the reason why the budget had only been increased by $1,000. We did create a new subcategory for this budget for purchase services. We found this year when we had the ice storm we had on January 23rd, it created a lot of damage. Not just the trees, but it took down power lines throughout town. I'm sure most, if not all of you residents seen our staff, as well as the light department, the fire department, the police department, were out for days at a time. We previously had no subcategory for this in order to hire a contractor to come assist us. So we ended up creating this category. We ended up, particularly for that storm, we had a tree company come in for 4 days to assist us with removing the most dangerous hangers. When I say a hanger or a widowmaker, it's whenever there's a tree or a large branch snapped hanging up in the trees above a sidewalk or a roadway. It's all public safety issues. Okay, so we added this subcategory, so we will now have it in our snow and ice budget for if this instance happens again. At least we have a small amount of funding in there in order to assist us with something like that. On top of that, especially with COVID, as everybody's aware, a lot of people were sick the last couple of years. You know, we were setting up mutual aid. We spoke with a lot of the surrounding towns to try to make certain that each and every town around us were covered if they lost employees. Same with us. We wanted to do the same. So adding this line item would also give us the ability to hire subcontractors if we got in that point where we needed it and we couldn't get any mutual aid to come in and assist us. And we basically transferred the money from the salt and materials up to purchase services to create this. With that said, I really think we're underfunded here with the salt and materials. I personally think that figure should be a little higher. Again, we were trying to keep these dollar figures down, as we know there's a deficit in the town already. So that's where we're at.
So Travis, I got to preface it with an issue that's not your issue, but if we look at account 1423, we've kind of gotten away from comparing the actual amount spent versus the budgeted request.
Sure.
So you just said something that I would have, you saved me from myself, because I would have said the opposite. You would have said that, you said the salt and sand is under budgeted, but I would have said, on balance, this has been a pretty mild winter. So I'm thinking that maybe there was some savings in that particular area, and I think you're saying, no, there isn't, because it was under budgeted.
Yep. So
And we're continuing the under budgeting going forward.
Yep. So I will tell you that is not the case. As though it may appear as though it was a mild winter, this year we've had 27 events where we were out either plowing or plowing and treating roads. To this point in time, we have
Yep, good point.
We are, as of March 1st, we were starting to deficit spend in the snow and ice budget. After that, we had to order more salt. We've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 plowing events this year. I know it doesn't seem that way, but we have. Again, it's 27 events in total. And I will tell you, from our perspective, yeah, seems like a mild winter. We had a lot of rain in December. All that rain freezes. It creates black ice. We spend more money when we have a mild winter like this. If the temperatures are hovering around freezing, 32, 33 degrees, in my opinion, it costs us a lot more to have that than it would be if it was 25 and snowing, because we have to go out and treat the roads a lot more frequently. Again, I know it seems like a mild winter, but that's just, it's not the case, and we're going to use those funds.
Well,
Mark, just to add on to this and to what Travis said, looking at the expenditure report, you got to remember too that the purchase services for the tree removal came out of that, which wasn't budgeted, right? So you're showing about $11,000 that the town had to spend to have people to deal with the ice storm trees, and the salt and sand is right up there. I mean, the overtime looks like it's down. It looks like you're not paying there's not as many hours going into overtime plowing and sanding, but everything else, equipment, purchase services, and salt sand is right at the budgeted amount.
Yeah. So in order for the salt coalition that we're part of, we have to give them each year a minimum and a maximum and an average of what we're expected to use for salt.
Yeah.
Our minimum tonnage that we have to buy through this coalition is 1,200 tons of salt. Now, I can tell you as of today, we've already purchased over 1,600 ton of salt this year. Not all of that has been put on the road as of yet, as we do still have some salt left in the barn. But it's not cheap, and especially in a rainy winter like we had this year, we use a lot of material.
Well, I'm sure I didn't make any friends with the highway department, DPW employees by my misconception on winter, so I look forward to digging myself out of the end of my driveway on the next storm. So, all good points.
No harm taken at all, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? How about the cemetery?
Okay. So again, the cemetery, as previously mentioned, we took out $17,685 out of compensation and added that into the highway compensation budget. With that funding, we're looking to hire 2 part-time employees for the summer months. Basically, it would be 9 weeks, 2 employees at 19 hours a week, part-time, to try to assist our staff with the mowing. So so that everybody in town, so that you folks and everybody in town's aware, the mowing, we have 2 full-time employees that do nothing but mow grass. And we also have a 3rd employee that's anywhere from 20 to 30, sometimes 40 hours a week, depending on the weather we're getting, the time of year, mowing grass. So we're 2 or 3 employees full-time, doing nothing but mowing from the time we start mowing to the time we stop mowing, and we can't keep up with it like that. So that was the reason that last year we requested the increase in the cemetery line item for compensation in order to get some part-time employees. Again, so we moved the funds for compensation over to highway just to kind of streamline, make everything a little bit more transparent. Everything else is level funded from last year.
Any questions?
No question.
Travis, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming out another evening,
Certainly.
making the presentation, and thank you and the staff for the wonderful job they do 52 weeks a year. So,
Perfect.
Thank you, Travis.
I thank you all very much for your time. Have a good evening.
thank you.
Too.
Thank you.
So the next next item on our agenda is item number 6. And it kind of falls back a little bit to the workbook that we have in front of us, which is the decision that I made. It was the last one that Rich sent to me, and I sent it out to you, and there could have been some other things that came through the pipeline in the interim, but my thought was, let's leave the one that you have that you might be preparing on. The one that you have shows a budget deficit of $314,000, which does not include DPW. The net of the DPW and the merging of the snow and ice and cemetery added $58,000 to the deficit, which does not include the two positions that he'd like to have but does not have. And I recently received the Bay Path school budget, which is going, unless I've misread it, is going to add $60,000 to our deficit for a grand total of $432,000 is the deficit that we have unofficially, but just kind of rule of thumb-esque this evening. So we have some work to do. The first bullet under number 6 was the schools, and Heather actually addressed that a minute ago by saying that they're coming, they're going to present. I didn't know if it was going to be 2 dates, but it's all in one evening, and I think you're right. I think you'll find Bay State's going to be very efficient, and Wachusett Regional is going to generate a lot of questions. I have both of those budgets. I'll use the phrase I used in one of my emails. I don't want you to have email fatigue, so I hit the pause button. But tomorrow morning, I'll send both of those to your attention. Some of you might have had the Wachusett School one already, but I'll send it to everybody, and nobody has the Bay Path. I'll send that to you. All PowerPoint-esque, very well done, but it's easy to extract what our assessment is. Notwithstanding what might come down the pike in a period of time, but I think we work with what we have and hope for the best that the assessments might be improved a little bit. Just as a footnote, I was struck by Bay Path's comprehensive budget that increased 1 year to the next 2.5%, spot on to the number. Some went down 7%, one went up 9%. Ours went up a little bit, which translated into the 60,000. We had more students and the like, but I'll let the PowerPoint presentation speak for itself and let them speak for themselves the night that they go to our joint meeting. The second bullet is I've been asked by a lot of you in terms of what does this approve the budget mean? And if you look at the worksheet, there's lots of dates and there's some R's. The R's essentially are, we haven't technically approved the budget for various reasons. For example, last week, Rich made a motion to approve the fire department, and we asked it to be held off. But there are about 13 or 15 that we haven't approved. The question is, well, if we approve it, does that mean that we can revisit it? And that's the third bullet. It should be everybody's understanding that every one of our cost centers and budgets is open for reconsideration, particularly if we're trying to balance a $432,000 deficit. So I'll defer to the will and the whim and the wish of the committee, but I don't see any value in sitting here tonight and approving budgets that we're going to take a look at in a week or two and maybe unapprove them. So I think we live with what we have. It was a good model going forward. It might be a little more confusing than not to go back in terms of which ones we did. I wouldn't want to approve one that's already been approved. I wouldn't want to miss one. So given that the handoff that's occurred, I'm just going to say, let's live with what we have. I don't think it doesn't change the numbers. And I think going forward over the next 2 to 3 to 4 weeks, we should probably look at every single one of them, which is my fourth item, on number 6. With your approval and willingness, I'm asking everybody, with the budget that they have now, we'll send a new improved one, which will include the highway and the 3 budgets that Travis presented. It'll include Bay State. Is everybody submit to me, I'd like to be the clearinghouse, all your thoughts on whatever it is that you think you'd like to take a look at or talk about revisiting a budget with the eyes toward eliminating and approving it. I'll coordinate it. I'm not going to eliminate anyone's, so if Seth, you say you want to take $10 out of the post office budget, then that's going to go on the list. We don't have a post office budget, so you get my point. And we're going to talk about every one of those, and that there shouldn't be any sacred cows or anything that you don't want to talk about. You put it on the list, we're going to talk about it, and we're going to vote it. Because we got to do a lot of work, both on the revenue side and the expense side. Jennifer and I, not violating open meeting laws today, spoke about that. We've been the longest serving member on this finance committee. We've never seen a deficit staring us in the face at 432,000. We've seen 112 and maybe 175, but this has got some big numbers, so we got some work to do, and it's not always going to be additional state aid or reduced assessments from Worcester, Wachusett Regional School District. We got some work to do. Not the least of which is that you got DPW needs 2 positions that are not here. The police made a compelling case the other day that their salaries are not competitive. And even notwithstanding those, we got to sharpen our pencils and do some cutting. So I'm asking you to send it in any form, fashion, manner that you want to send it. I don't have a prototype. I don't have an Excel file. You just want to write a narrative and send it to me. I'll put it on an Excel file, and we'll go department by department, line by line, which is going to take some work. And there could be some departments that we don't want to spend some time. That'd be great. There may be some departments that we can't spend any time because there's nothing we can do about it. That would be great. But I don't know what Steve's thinking. I don't know what Jeremy's thinking. And for that matter, you might not know what I'm thinking. But I need input from everybody. So sounds tedious, but I don't know how else to do it. I don't want to just have Heather and I, get in a room someday and say, well, here it is. We eliminated these 5 departments and we got a balanced budget. What do you think of that? We want your input. You've been here for 2 months, so stay with us for 1 month longer and give me your input. That's basically my point. Make sense? So what's a good time in terms of you doing that? 1 week, 2 weeks? How about 2 weeks from this evening? Okay? If you want to get it to me before then, that's great, but how about no later than?
So you're saying recommendations to you regarding what we would like to look at or proposed budget cuts by
Yes.
March 22nd.
Right. How you say it, what you say, how much you say, all up to you.
Okay, we also talked, your subject matter title of 6 also talks about meetings scheduled. I would like to propose to my fellow members here that we need to look at the ability to do some meetings in Zoom as an option going forward, because I believe it's going to be mandatory for all meetings going forward that we have a quorum. And it's going to become difficult for some of us to attend in person where we may be able to attend via a Zoom meeting. A case in point, next week, a couple of us have been talking. on the 15th, it would be preferable if we could have a Zoom meeting, because I'm going to be out of town and others can speak, but I can't be here in person next week. I can't attend a Zoom meeting, as I will be out of town, and I'll make the time to make the meeting, but I can't be in here in person. So I bring that up for everyone's consideration and discussion. I believe, Lori questioned, that the extension for open meetings, on Zoom were allowed to this March. I thought I read somewhere it's like in 2024. I think somebody,
I'm simply going to ask.
The current,
what
the
do you-
current
what
one
do you know?
expires 3/31, but I believe the new one is going to be extended by the state's going to extend it.
For
Yeah.
2 years, yeah.
2 years.
It's in
for
the
the first of the
legislature
year.
right
Yeah,
now.
that's what I
Right.
thought. I
You
thought
can
it was
plan, you can
sometime
plan
in
on it going
2024.
on.
So just so you know as well, we've been discussing this a little bit on the select board side, where in the event that we get to the end of March, at the last meeting of March, because it expires the end of March, if for some reason it hasn't been extended yet, the select board will consider doing remote participation. So you remember, prior to the whole COVID piece, there was an ability for individuals to remotely participate in a meeting, provided that the select board voted to say it was okay, and that a quorum was present in person. Then other people, as long as it was geographic distance or an illness or something that was approved by the chair, could theoretically attend. So that was the old law, right? So just in case, we're keeping our fingers on the pulse on this one. So in the event that it doesn't get extended by the end of March, I think it will, probably to Lori's point, the 12th hour, right? Last hour, they do have that potential, and Donna has it penciled into the docket on March 27th for the select board meeting, just in case.
Okay.
So the old law, though, you'd still have a quorum in person?
You'd still have to have a quorum, yeah, so that's what the old law was, which is still hard, but,
Right.
it's a little bit better to at least give some flexibility. It's better than nothing, right? But we'll converse back and forth as we get more information. I imagine MMA will be all over it, so as soon as something passes, it'll be in one of their updates.
So Steve, your point's well made. In person would be a preference, but having a meeting would be the priority, so,
Especially with a required quorum.
correct. So, I'm going to skip over number 7 for a minute. Number 8, we serve on, Finance Committee members serve on 4 other committees, work forces, teams, et cetera. Is there an update on anything on EDC, Jeremy?
Well, the last I've heard, EDC is going to meet on the 20th, planning,
Either the 20th or 27th, I'm not sure yet.
so nothing done, nothing yet.
Yeah, we're working on it, so it was hard with scheduling. We had one individual who was only mostly available on Mondays. So before we go ahead and schedule it for sure on the Monday, we're making sure that individual who said they were only available on Monday is actually available on Monday.
Right.
So, but there should definitely be one. We should make it happen by the end of the month.
The update on CIPC, I'll keep it very short. We're essentially meeting every week. We're meeting again tomorrow night, and we have tentative meetings scheduled for the 16th and the 23rd. We've gotten most of the presentations made to us. The good news is they're all worthy projects. The bad news is they're $500,000 worth, which added to our deficit is going to be a challenge in order for us to fund all of them, but we'll make our recommendations, and those will be brought back to this committee informally, and they'll be brought back to this committee in the form of a warrant article for the Finance Committee, basically to recommend approval, disapproval, or no action. The Wachusett Regional School District Audit Advisory Board, I think I gave the last update since we last met. We haven't met since, but it is a little bit of a challenge. We're, believe it or not, we're still trying to get in the end zone, the June 30th, 2021 audit. It's not complete, might flow into the next item on our agenda. and haven't even begun to think about the June 30th, 22 audit being complete. So as an update in our next item, I'll defer to that. And then Heather, maybe you can comment. The financial management team meets as often as it can, whenever it can. Rich's schedule and other schedules have made it a little bit challenging, but they have met, and they continue to try to meet once a month.
Yeah, we're gonna, I'll reach out to you, Mark, where Rich is out and see what we can do. I was probably gonna just push it to Thursday afternoons if you're available. We could talk offline on that.
Yep.
We haven't actually met, I think, in about 2 months. I think one meeting Rich missed, and then last meeting, he didn't feel comfortable because he needed to keep himself healthy.
Incubate. So,
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So we do need to put one on the book, so I'll reach out to you offline.
Right. So with regard to our, before we get to if there is any new or old business, number 7, a couple of us in the room attended a meeting on February 27th of the Wachusett Regional School Committee, which was presented by and sponsored by the subcommittee of that school committee, the Business and Finance. There was scheduled a public session the Thursday following that Monday meeting, which got postponed. It was rescheduled to this Monday, the 6th. Did that go off as well, or did that get postponed? Did you attend?
I did not. I had a conflict on Monday night. I'm trying to see if they record it. I think they do, but I haven't been able to locate the video, so I'll reach out to Randy. But I believe, as far as I know, they met. There
Yeah.
was no last-minute email, at least, that they weren't.
So I think when I sent you the meeting agenda, I sent you kind of a snapshot version of the meeting on the 6th with one observer's narrative account of what took place, and I would say that that person could not have said it any better or any more succinctly. And I have reported to you in previous Wachusett Regional School Audit Advisory Board sessions. It's a terrible story. That's the only thing I can tell you. It's 3 years in the making. The budget's a mess. Finances are a mess. We're blessed with a new superintendent and he with a new vice president of finance. I think they're the team that are going to get us out of this, but it's going to take a year. But in the meantime, the budget allocations are not very appealing. Ours is, as Heather said, 4.8. 4.18, I'm sorry, 4.18. Rutland's is 9 point something. So you can imagine how thrilled they are. And the problem is that, as I have said in previous meetings, some school committee members in this subcommittee, in my estimation, fell asleep at the switch for 3 years. None of this should have gone undetected. None of this should have gone unnoticed, but it did. Allocations a year ago were wrong. They can't finish the audit because they don't have a good accounting infrastructure. At a $118 million budget, that's just flat out inexcusable. The blessing is, and you'll see for yourself, this school superintendent, Jim Reedy, is godsend in terms of this district, so we're lucky to have him. But in the meantime, the financial news is not going to be good. The footnote, though, to the picture that I sent you, I don't know if who can call it up, is you'll notice, or maybe you didn't notice, but to the far left is yours truly. So I'm not looking for my 15 minutes of fame, but you'll notice that there's an inner table and an outer table. And unfortunately, our Finance Committee was relegated to the outer table because a determination was made that the Finance Committee would not be allowed at the inner table, which I think was a mistake, because if you weren't at the inner table, you couldn't contribute to the conversation or the discussion or any of the dialogue. And Heather and I have spoke about this, but I'll go on record, we were the only town that did not have a finance committee member at that table. And that was a mistake, I think, and it was the decision made without consulting the finance committee. I think it was a wrong decision, and I think it was inappropriate not to consult us, and I hope it doesn't happen again, because our finance committee had a lot to say. It was about the budget, which is half of our own budget, and we weren't engaged in the conversation, which I think is a mistake.
I was
Who's
gonna
that decision? Who's that decision?
Who, did we have any representation at the inner circle? Sorry, Tony.
Yeah, we
It's-
did.
It's basically what Tony's question is.
Yeah, the invitation was sent to the select board, the finance committee, and the town administrator. And decision was made that with the 2 seats available, that it would not include the finance committee. And had I been asked, I would have advocated that one of the seats should have been the finance committee, because the very first question that was asked by the finance committee member from the town of Princeton is, what's going on with the audit? I can't think of anybody who is more qualified to answer that question than myself and engage in the conversation, but the rules were set tightly by the chairman of that particular committee that if you're not at the end of the table, you don't have any say, you're not recognized. So I just think in the future, particularly when all the other towns had their finance committee members, all of which whom spoke, some for a long period of time, some 3 and 4 times, we should have been at the table, and we were qualified to do so. I just think it was a mistake, and it was a faux pas to not have included us in the decision as to who would sit there. So I'll make my point and rest my case.
What's the, like, expectation, I've never understood this, the expectation or like the role of our 2 school committee members from Paxton, like, are they meant to kind of just carry out their own individual agenda, or, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but, or is there supposed to be some accountability? Should they be involved or talking to committees like this? I have no idea who they report to, or if there's any.
I think that's a great question to ask them if they're here before us on the 27th.
Well, I think Tony's question is school committee.
Right, are our school,
committee
are our 2 members from Paxton, Scott Runstrom and Carl Artmar, are they gonna be here on the 27th?
I doubt it.
Is there an
believe Donna
expectation
invited
that
them.
they're, like, advocates for our town, or are they just there to carry?
Because
out-
what I mean, that's a great question that I think they need to answer, because, again, the general consensus that I get, not only from Mark, but other people who are attending these meetings, is that where's the school committee been? If the school committee is supposed to be the group that's directing, the district, they've got some onus to this 3-year debacle with the finance. They really do, especially the members who have been there for 3 years.
And I don't mind being on record saying that it's just a
No.
lot of times I think people are there with a specific agenda.
Right.
It's not necessarily from the town, and I don't know if they're beholden to carry out an agenda that comes from the town financially. A lot of times it seems like it's more maybe curriculum or things like that, but these are things maybe they should be more involved in and carry out, like what we're directing them, or select boards directing them to do, I don't know.
So I don't mean to not support both of what you just said, and I also don't mean to walk back my comment. But I will say that it's the Finance and Budget Subcommittee who I think is at fault, neither of which of our 2 school committee members are members. I think that's an important distinction. So.
Mark? I just heard back from Randy, so for anyone who wants to watch the meetings, they can actually be found on holdentv.com. So if you go there, you have video on demand. You can also just catch the most recent special meeting from Monday on there as well.
That's the March 6th meeting? Yes.
I believe that's the one. It doesn't show a date, but if I click on it, it'll make all kinds of noise and people will get mad at me.
So the last question I have is the water department. It is in our financial management policies that they would give something to us. Now, there's something in the back of our workbook, but it's revenue is this and expense is that. Is there going to be more detail? And we've never done that before, and raised that point when we were reviewing the financial management policies, that we've never done that before. And so far this year, we haven't done it. Are they on the agenda in the docket to come before us?
So we have, Travis submitted a budget to me from them that they approved. What I can do, Mark, either you or I can reach out to Travis and/or the Water Commission and see if they would like to come jointly, or just send Travis and just do a brief presentation on the water budget.
Right. And in part for two reasons. It's in the financial policies, number one. And
Yep.
number two is, we vote on that warrant article. And I think we should have some more information as to what it is we're voting on.
Absolutely.
Any new business? Old business?
Yes. Can someone provide an update on where we stand with the Finance Committee bylaws, please?
They're pending to go back to the select board meeting at some particular point based on the feedback that we got the night that we presented them, and made some amendments to that. I want to be careful, but I got the final comments on the rewrite from our chairman this weekend, before he took his leave, and I have them, and I'll circulate them to the committee and get them back to the board to invite us back to present and defend the changes that we made, some of which were recommended by them and some of which we recommend based on the conversation that evening. So I think they're on the 10-yard line, but for the lack of a better word, it's in my court.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, the extension of the town meeting gives us a little bit of extra time?
Yes.
Once the select board pushes
Yes,
out the
okay.
closing the warrant, yes.
Yeah. But it is going to be a warrant article,
Sure, yep,
right?
understood.
Yeah. But I have
And
them,
just,
Steve.
again, so I make sure I understood what you just said to us. You have comments from Rich, you're going to reflect them in the bylaw, or you're going to take them under consideration, or you're going to provide the current version of the bylaw with Rich's comments attached and wait for our feedback back to you?
I'm going to distribute what he has recommended to other members of the Finance Committee for them to opine on it. So that I'm not making a decision, nor is he making a decision unilaterally. Everybody is having input on it. But I'm quarterbacking the wordsmithing and the word processing of that right now myself.
Okay, thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Hearing none, we're adjourned.